Welcome to Take 10. I'm enjoying talking to Bishop Dave Dolan of Sullivan, Illinois. He pastors a fabulous place called New Life, and then he is a bishop over many men in his network. Oh, I don't know, there may be 40, 50 locally. There are pastors that come monthly to just talk and to find out what they can do to strengthen their hands. And you might want to get back to the other segments that we talked about, because we've already talked about how you came to your calling and you wanted to do this more than anything, and how the role of servitude played a great magnitude in your life toward the future. And then we talked about how you study, not only for your sermons, but for your activity in the larger world, your city, your state, your national inclinations, and your international ministries. But today, I want to talk about how your relationships have helped you in your ministry. I remember coming to Sullivan with just an address.
Right.
You invited me to come. It was a cold night. Came out that way, 3.5 miles from town, in the middle of a cornfield, set a little church.
Yeah.
And in that little church, oh, we had a hee-ho time that night. And I remember prophesying so much that I felt ashamed of myself on the way home. And I told my wife, look what I prophesied over this guy. I can't imagine what got in the middle of a cornfield. And if you go back to Sullivan today, there's buildings everywhere, and a huge, massive auditorium with a massive theatrical stage, and awesome people drive an average of 4. Everything that was prophesied has come to pass. And from that place, you reach the capacity that God is allowing you to reach.
Right.
But I saw a lonely man that night. You and Deb were all alone out there in that field, but it's where God planted you.
Right.
I want to know how that relationships helped you, because I know that if you walk into some of the major congregations of America, I know how their security teams pull you to the front or pull you to the pastor's office, because they know that the pastor of that wants to talk to you just to hear some of your wisdom. And I want to know how you got there from that little place in Sullivan.
Well, that sure didn't happen overnight. We were in an atmosphere spiritually and came out of a spiritual culture that information was not shared. And so you were left trying to dig for the gems of knowledge and wisdom and principles in building a church and walking in excellence. And we came to the point where we were very, very frustrated. We had gone through a cycle of people coming and going. And at that moment, you make one of two decisions. You either become content with your own personal frustration, or you make the decision that no matter what the cost is, you reach beyond yourself, willing to receive any information that will make adjustments or corrections in your personal life, in your church life, because you've come to that point where you are desperate to honor God, and you know that the call of God is still upon your life. So we began to reach beyond ourselves and made some phone calls and just made a request. I need an hour of your time. And looking at men and women of God that were marching to a beat and a cycle that was bringing great fruitfulness, and the hand of God was upon them. And one of the things that I learned is that those relationships can become great pillars of strength that will help you focus and give you clarity, maybe even entice and strengthen your vision. But when you approach those men of God that are doing great things, I learned that they begin to look at you and say, do you just want to connect with me because of our name recognition, or are you really interested in who I am? And so my wife and I learned that the protocol for access to greater men and women of God so that they can create an opportunity for information to flow to you is honor. And so being able to honor them with significance and whatever gift you can bring them creates an atmosphere of access And all of a sudden, information begins to flow. And I learned to listen, because when you're frustrated and nothing's working in your life, you want to regurgitate all of your problems, but that's not what you need to be able to do.
Exactly.
You need to be able to listen, because they can speak a word to you in conversation that will answer many questions for you. Take that as you get access to their life, to their ministry. All of a sudden, things in your life begin to change.
Exactly.
Your perspective begins to change. Never assume anything when you approach somebody that's doing more than you, because those relationships, if built correctly and accessed properly, will last for a lifetime and pay huge dividends that God will bless you for. And you can become then the conduit for relationships to flow to other pastors and be a blessing to them.
You know, I remember you telling me about this, and we kind of laughed about it, because we hear from the Lord, and sometimes we act on it. It shocks people. Yeah. You called a leader of a major organization the other day, and tell us about that. That was a unique thing. And I say this because those of you who think maybe your ministry is insignificant, if you build the relationships, you might find that God will use you to be a support system for other people. And people that want to support you may not want to support you without knowing you.
Right.
And if you do not know them, or you do not make that relationship, it's an effort to make a relationship.
Right.
You have to reach beyond your comfortability. You don't have any specific relationship with this person
Right.
that you're going to talk about, but you had enough honor with the person to make the phone call.
Right. I'd met this gentleman once. He's over a major organization, has hundreds of churches and ministers underneath of him. And I just felt in prayer, and the Lord impressed upon me that I needed to call him and just let him know that I was praying for him. Didn't know what the situation was. Made many attempts to get a hold of him. Never underestimate what God speaks to you, because it can create an avenue and a pathway for connection. So when I called this gentleman and just mentioned, I'm praying for you, I don't know what's going on in your life, he was shocked that I called. He said, normally I'm the one making the phone calls to other pastors and ministers, and he made this statement, and it shocked me. I've never had anyone in the network of my organizations call me and ask me how I was doing.
I have a habit of asking some guys. I just text them and say, "You okay?"
Yeah.
And they know that I have them on my radar screen, and it's amazing as time goes by and relationship goes by. If I did that to you, you'd just start telling me,
Yeah.
"Well, yeah, I'm okay, but," and off we go. And it reminds me, Dave, that you are actually doing, and I watched you do among some of the greats, and I wondered myself, how did he make inroads to become a confidant of men that he greatly respects? And it was because you did the biblical principle of Philip joining himself to the Ethiopian eunuch and just asking a question. You understand what you read?
Always asking and finding a way, and asking them, even though you're hurting and you need some answers, how can I serve you? And when they see your servant's heart, then, and we're not going to throw names around, but I've been in these gentlemen's homes, I've heard their heart, and sometimes they can be misconstrued because of the platform that they have. And I was in one of these pastors' churches in between services, and he told me, "I need you to come to my office." I was overwhelmed. He looked at me and said, "I need you to pray for me now."
Now.
This man runs multitudes in his church, and yet I'm very honored, but I have access, and I understood the protocol to honor him, so he trusts me. And now that relationship is reciprocal.
But there was a day when you'd go to that place, and you felt like you were a round peg in a square hole.
Absolutely.
And people that were around him looked down on you. Yeah. Well, we got to close, and we got to go on. Your Take 10 is about over, but just let me tell you, you that are in organizations and you're in service organizations within the ICCI, never, ever question God about approaching a businessman or approaching someone with help. God can help you. Listen for those that God wants you to make a relationship with. It'll pay big dividends. Relationships launch ministry. God bless you. See you next time.